So, good evening, everybody. It's so lovely to see all your faces and your names. My name's Lisa Siegel. I'm the national president of A Squared E Squared, and I'm just really pleased that you're joining us tonight. I am going to immediately hand over to our dear Sandra to do an acknowledgement.
Thanks, Lisa. Can you just move the slide along for us? Thank
Did you see
you.
it?
Yeah. So, first to acknowledge country. Thank you for that, Lisa. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as the first peoples of this nation, are the holders of ancestral knowledge, law, and wisdom. We acknowledge First Nations people and country from throughout Australia. People of the hills, stony country, wetlands, riverlands, forests, oceans and coasts, woodlands, snowlands, high country and deserts. We pay respects to elders past and present, particularly Len Collard and Sue Price, who are here with us today. Thank you, Len and Sue. We acknowledge traditional owners and cultural custodians where you are located today and acknowledge the wisdom in caring for country, stories, and intergenerational knowledge across time. Everyone in this learning circle today understands the importance of Indigenous knowledge on the planet at this historical juncture. Thanks very much to A Squared E Squared, to the Australian Association for Environmental Education, and to everyone here. Together, we have incredibly important work to do. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Sandra. And before we get started with business, well, first I want to say Kinagai, and I am here on Gumbaynggirr country, and I'll acknowledge Gumbaynggirr elders, past, present, and emerging. And I see a few other Gumbaynggirr dwellers here as well. Lovely to see you. And welcoming people from around the whole continent. I just wanted to share before we get started that, A Squared E Squared is very, very, very busy these days. So we have some people here who are members. We have others who are not. Membership is open to all environmental educators. And I just wanted to particularly shout out that we have our national conference coming up in August. It's an online conference for the first time ever. So please be part of this historic event. We're going to be running it one day a week over for the 4 weeks of August. And it's going to be really cool. It's going to be very interactive. And the call for proposals is open now. So all of you are welcome to put in a proposal for running a workshop or a little presentation. And the information is there on that QR code or that link. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly say is that for our members or for our chapters, we have 3 small grants open. And I know money is always a bit of a thing for us environmental educators. So please check out our seed grants. We're going to give out three $1,000 grants to people who have small projects they want to get going. And if you don't have one currently, maybe this evening will inspire you to start something with your chapter or in your local community. So those are the 2 things that I just wanted to pop in there really quickly before we start. And now I really want to hand the rest of the evening over to Sandra and Len and Sue. And I'm going to introduce Sandra, and then Sandra will introduce Len and Sue. Sandra is one of our national executive members, a very dedicated environmental educator with years and years of just absolute passion and love for environmental education. And she's a professor and a senior research fellow at the Nyungar Research Institute over in Western Australia. And she is a very amazing contributor to our research journal, the Australian Journal of Environmental Education. And she just has this amazing mind that we are all very, that we learn from all the time in A Squared E Squared. So Sandra, I know you didn't know I was going to say all that, and I just did because I wanted to acknowledge that. And it was Sandra's idea to have this evening in this learning circle. So I'm going to hand it over to you with thanks, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That was too kind of you. And just to acknowledge that Len and Anne Polina as well, who's not here at the moment, have been part of this long journey, particularly Len, who has worked with me. You know, we've both worked together for since well and truly last century. Would you just turn the slide for us? Thanks, Lisa. Thank you. So first I wish to acknowledge that I'm on Warradandi Nyungar country, which is coastal land in the southwest. And I wish to acknowledge and welcome Len, who can do his welcome to Whadjuk country. Now, just a few words about Len before we start. Len is a Whadjuk Nyungar Bridia, and he's a Bridia two ways. He'll explain what Bridia means in a minute. He is actually an emeritus professor with the University of Western Australia and a current and busy adjunct professor with Notre Dame. So we're really grateful to all of the work Len does. Len, would you be able to introduce yourself as a Bridia and also a little bit about Whadjuk country, please?
Okay, ngala nyunga murungan Bridia ni bujuran ngan wanga nuna ngan kwap win would kulin nuna nilalang nuna boodjar. So first of all, I acknowledge the good spirit to go to the visitors that are talking here on from and on your countries. The Whadjuk boodjar is in the southwest corner of Western Australia, and my particular family come from what the colonials called Perth or Fremantle or the metropolitan area of the city here. And my role as a Bridie, or to explain the notion of the Bridie or the Bridia in our language is the person who walks at the front of the line. So when you look at drawings or when you see on-country engagement, it's the Bridias that walk at the front and everyone falls in line after. Why do we do that in the Noongar lands, and I think elsewhere, is because you need to understand the person at the front knows the routes, knows the pathways, knows the boodjar, knows the estates intimately, hence that's why they walk at the front. And so one of the other important reasons is I think we've got 3 or 4 of the most poisonous snakes in the world here on the Noongar boodjar. And so Noongars walk at the front to make sure the roads following don't tread on the snake. Because as the Noongar say, by the time you dig the hole, all you do is fall in it, you'll be dead. So always the bosses of the country, the people that know the lands and the estates, walk at the front and everybody else falls behind. So in a sense, in the connection to academy, I suppose, fortunately for me, both those titles that Sandra articulated were given to me by others. I don't know, half the time you never know who nominates for these things, but people recognised that I must have been leading in some way or another, and hence those 2 titles. Before that, I was a professor at University of WA. I worked at Edith Cowan as Chair of Aboriginal Studies. I worked at Notre Dame. And where else did I work? Curtin. Yeah. Feels like I've been everywhere. But they're mainly all on the Noongar land, so that's probably why.
Thank you very much, Len. We have a beautiful picture here of the boodjar. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, for other Australians, you probably may not be familiar with this particular plant. It only grows in the Noongar lands, and it's a sacred tree. And in the Noongar world, they're all sacred trees, but this one is it's a favourite of mine because it's my birth totem or my ancestor. So when I was born on the 24th of December 1959, the boodjar is in full bloom. And in our culture, when the boodjar blooms, and it starts in around about October, it's the natural indicators that tells the Noongars it's time for tribal gatherings, and you come to the campfires to engage in cultural processes of catching up on the gossip, maybe settling in old disputes, maybe finding out, who's been up to what. and all that sort of stuff, including induction of man and woman making activity. So when the boodjar, when I was given the name the boodjar, was because I was born in the apex of the ceremonial activity on the sacred Noongar lands. And so the Noongars said that, Lenny, you're born then, you're going to be a special person. And they read your future. And they basically say that's your challenge, whether or not you choose to take it up, to be a carrier of knowledge. And I suppose once I got to union, I went into actually be employed, always aspiring to reach the top of the apex, to be the very best of what you can be, and hence the bit of the background of a professor at UWA and emerita and an adjunct and all that sort of stuff. So if you come into the Nyungar lands during October, all the way from the east around Esperance, sort of coming through Kalgoorlie into the Noongar boodjar, you will see the iconic orange tree, which one will tell you you're in the Noongar lands, and two, it's ceremony time amongst the Noongars.
Thank you very much, Len. Thank you. Lisa, would you move the slide, please? Thank you. And what I just discovered right then, this is for everybody in the room, if you make sure you're viewing it on side-by-side speaker, hopefully it will take you to the person who is speaking. So, okay, next I would like to acknowledge Sue Price. Sue is currently on Worimi country, and she is a Nyungar woman from the South Coast. So thank you very much for coming, Sue.
Hi, I'm actually a Yuin woman from the South Coast. And however, although I go and spend time there probably about every 6 weeks, I grew up in Western Sydney on Darug country, and I'm currently living on Worimi country. And I have a lot to do with some elders, particularly from Whadjuk country. So they're all Koori, they're all East Coast. It follows through my mother's line to my grandfather and my great-grandmother on the South Coast. My father was a 10-pound pom from England. I am hugely connected to country, to being passionate about learning more about both my country and the other Koori countries on the East Coast. My background as far as teaching is concerned, originally I was a landscape architect, and then I worked in environmental education at council level, and transferred over to teaching for the Department of Education in New South Wales, working in the environmental education centres and teaching environmental education and cultural education. I also spent 10 years working as a lecturer and tutor at Western Sydney in the School of Education, teaching both education for sustainability, learning social justice and diversity, and then I spent 5 years teaching in the AAEE program, which is a specialised Bachelor of Education for Aboriginal students, and taught integrating Aboriginal knowledges into teaching in the primary school. So that's a bit of my background. Sandra and I discussed that this is a lily pilly on the screen. We're actually coming into lily pilly season here on the East Coast. And lily pillies are an indicator that the weather is changing. It's changing to the cooler time of year, which is coming up to burning time of year. So once the lily pillies are finished, it means that we're heading into a time when country can be burned and renewed. Thanks, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Sue. Lisa, would you change the slide, please? Thank you.
Did I turn this on, Sandra?
Sure, thank
Yep.
you very much. So this is a little film made by Len a couple of years ago on Welcome to Country.
Kaya, my name's Len Collard. I'm a Whadjuk Nyungar. And us Whadjuks, we're the biddies of the boodjar in and around the city of Perth. The Welcome to Country is an important cultural diplomacy engagement model, whereby the traditional owners, like myself, Whadjuks here on our country, have a role to play in developing a dialogue around welcome. What does a Welcome to Country mean? It means a couple of things. The first one, boodjar. Boodjar is our country. It also means moort. Moort is our family or our kin. And of course, Whadjuk is the knowledge. And so when I do the Welcome to Country, those three things, it's my country, it's my people, and it's my knowledge that I'm sharing with you today. The thing about the Welcome to Country, it really is, I think, a part of the Australian Inclusion Group's core values. The good news is that the Welcome to Country is going to be something that you'll see more of. And to speak in my language, Nyungar boodjar, Bilia boodjar. This is the land where the river is. A long time ago, our family lived on their little houses here by the river. And of course, the sharing of knowledge and ideas, or the Whadjuk, was a core value amongst the families. One of the concepts about the Welcome to Country is about making sure that everybody gets to engage with local Noongar peoples. The idea of the Australian Inclusion Group is to make sure that everybody gets a chance to participate and engage in community, in workplace and career opportunities. Just like the Noongars have always said that we must make sure that everybody feels safe and engaged in, on and around our country. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a little story, or a yarn, what us Noongars call it, about the beer and the Bilia boodjar. So the beer is the river and the boodjar is the land. So the Bilia boodjar is the river bank or the riverlands, where the water meets the land. In the Dreamtime epics, the rainbow serpent, which we call Whadjuk, created the land, the rivers and all the things in it. And so today, the way Noongar see the river is the giant rainbow serpent. And as it flows backwards and forwards, it brings nourishment and it brings a place of love and more where people can cohabitate. On the left-hand side of me, behind me, you might notice there's some what we call the Nyungar. The Nyungar is the whiskers of the rainbow serpent. It always identifies fresh water. So I would imagine if we dug down here on the Bilia boodjar near the Nyungar Whadjuk, the whiskers of the rainbow serpent, we might come to fresh water. It also remind people that in this area there's a place called Freshwater Bay here on the Beard. So when the Noongars think about the river, they think about the rainbow serpent, they think about fresh water, and they think about places where Noongars can live and operate and go about their business. And of course we know that the Europeans built the city of Perth on the river for all those ancient values. So next time you're getting in, on or around the river, keep in mind the story of the rainbow serpent and keep an eye out for Nyungar Whadjuk. You never know, you might see his shimmer. So hopefully when you travel to the workplace and you go in, on and around the Noongar boodjar, you remember that you're welcome in our country, and hopefully soon we'll catch up.
Oops.
To say g'day or kaya. Buruan nganjenang and nuna. I'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lisa. If you could go to, yeah, if you could, thank you very much. And yeah, it's a beautiful little film. You can go back to it at any time. If you put inclusion and Len Collard into Google, it'll take you directly to it if you wish to. So I'm going to ask Len the history of Welcome to Country ceremonies But first I want to read out this little passage that Len sent me just the other day. And this is the first recorded welcome to country, as far as we know, anywhere across Australia. So this was recorded in 1836 on the south coast of WA, which is 10 years after the first settlement. And here's the passage. Soon after dark, they assembled around a large fire kindled for the purpose around our dwelling. Cloaks of the dancers were fastened around their middle, faces painted with red ochre and shining grease. Some had bunches of feathers or flowers stuck in their hair, while others completed their headdress with the tail of the wild dog, a small bone through a hole in the cartilage of the nose. All carried their spears and woomeras, and as they stood gathered around the fire, it threw a vivid glare on their greasy, shiny bodies. The effect was truly picturesque. The corroboree commenced with the dancers breaking out into a sort of chant in which the old men and women occasionally joined. The whole burden of the song consisted in the words, Nyungar Abia Martin Mari. Now, I'm going to ask Len also what that means in a minute, but I think it means welcome family, becoming family, but Len hopefully can correct that. Yes, so there is actually 3 pages of description about this ceremony, and it obviously was very impressive to James Brown, who took the notes at the time, and his notes were published only 10 or 11 years ago. So, Len, are you able to share more of the history of welcome to country ceremonies in Whadjuk country at least, and perhaps in Nyungar country more specifically?
Yeah, in my experience, it's just part of the normal making when people go to visit each other. There's diplomacy. I mean, if you take the old narrative, your parents tell you to go and see someone. There's a diplomacy. You go and knock on the door. You wait for someone to greet you and identify who you are and state your business to come into the house. You don't just bowl over there and knock down the door or open the door and go in. So, and it's the same in the Noongar world. When you go to other people's territory, including within Noongars, you just don't go bowling in there. You basically notify them that you're there for a start. When they do acknowledge that you're there, you'll go through a process of explaining what you're there for, or who you're looking for, or who you are, and to introduce yourself. And not always are people welcome. They might say, "We're busy today. I think you better go and come back tomorrow." And that's part and parcel of it. I know when I was talking to Sandy about it, when we took a group of students to Canada to speak with the Abenaki, the Aboriginal people up in where is it, near the big lakes and that there in Canada. And we got there to the community. We jumped off the bus. We were standing around and we were looking at each other, and obviously we're all excited because we're going to meet some of the local British. The bosses, and out they came, and in we went, and it was all good. Obviously being blokes, I'm talking to a bloke, and I having a chin wag with him, and he said, in the old culture, if we would have done it according to tradition, when you got off the bus, we would have told you to spread eagle, lie on the ground, and we'd come and check you, make sure you're not carrying any weapons or any knives or guns and things like that. And so the idea that that people have to have safety first and have to have good manners. It's just a basic human thing. And so I know certainly here in WA, there was this claim made by people, or the people themselves, including Ernie Dingo and Richard Wally, that, they invented the welcome to country. I mean, they didn't invent the welcome to country at all. All they were doing was doing welcome to country as requested by the Maori that came here and said that, well, when in our culture, we like to find out who the bosses are, blah, blah, blah. And so the idea that it was the first ever welcome to country, it might have been the first commercial welcome to country done for a group of Maoris, but it's actually just normal business in the Noongar lands. And from what I can tell, having spoken to many Nyungars and Yamajis and Mulbars and other Aboriginal people around the nation, it seems like there is a diplomacy about going into people's country. But of course, a bit of the stuff that's going on is causing some pushback and a bit of kickback and whatnot. And people, have all manner of observations and their opinions that they express. Some that's completely bonkers, and others it's just nasty, and others it's really quite friendly and warm and engaging.
Thank you very much, Len. While you're on that topic, you were telling me once, what I should say first is that Len and I have done a lot of historical interpretation together, cultural and historic interpretation. And we've talked a lot about when you come to the boundary of of one country into another, there are particular protocols that are historic. And it's to do with food availability, time of year, and so on. Are you able to talk about any of that, Lenny?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a child, I used to observe my grandfather and other old Noongars. They'd wake up in the morning, whether it was in the city or whether it was, out on the farms or wherever we were, and they'd sing out, and they'd sing out and call to the country. They're talking to people that we can't see, but they're there, and he's speaking to them in our language. So the good news was that we were inducted in that, not always explained to us, because obviously as children you're actually just soaking it up and listening. But as I grew older, and by the time I got to university, they were teaching you to think critically and ask questions. And then I had the privilege to go out on country with my grandfather to film and document him, because I knew that what he had to say was going to be important in the future. And keeping in mind that all of us right around Aboriginal and Islander Australia and other Australians as well, we were being inducted in to speak a foreign language in our lands. The domineering language was English. I'm sure we've all got English ancestry somewhere in the family tree, but the dominant language where we grew up is Noongar. We speak in our language, but of course we were also encouraged to go to the school and listen to the people, what they were saying, and keep them close to you. Read and understand their language. Do we share our language? Not really. We're there studying them. And so we were wanting to know about what they had to say and how they think and what they do. And one of the key things was you had to learn to speak English to understand what they were talking about, because in the house that I grew up in, Waikam Valley, which is a suburb 3 or 4 minutes from Fremantle, in the middle of urban Western Australia, the capital city, we spoke Nyungar. We didn't speak English. Only when I went to school that I had to listen to people talking English. It was a foreign language. I didn't know what they were talking about. But the point is that all this living culture was going on around us. And as children, you don't always necessarily ask. You don't necessarily question. You just follow along and do it. But with the Welcome to Countries, when we were going to visit other fellows, we're always tuned in. Now, Lenny, we're going to see the Noongars up here at Pingelly. That's our people up there, and they explain who's who and who's related to one another and blah, blah, blah. So they give you the full induction to it. So when you go there, you fellas, make sure you stay close to us. And when we go and see old Pop or old Auntie and whatever, we'll introduce you. You go up there and shake your hand and say hello and make yourself known to them. So later on when you go there, you know who's there. And, when we travelled out to the western, out east, out to Warburton and a place like that. I mean, Warburton is where the Nuttinjara and the Whadjuk, the Nuttinjara and the other Wongais out there. I mean, they don't speak the same language as us, but they still got diplomacy. And my dad always, and my mum told us, don't go bowling into the camps. You go stand on the side, sing out to them, tell them who you are, be on your best behaviour, and make sure that, you show respect. And so all these values, or what we call Kurundan and Kanya, they all about social etiquette, and they underpin the very essence of the way we operate today. And so for me, the idea of of welcome to country and understanding the environment. And we're always being taught about this tree or that plant, or when the boodjar came into flower, we'd be travelling east out to Brooklyn and that, and we'd see the tree. Hey, it must be Lenny's birthday coming up, you fellas. Make sure you got his present. And for you fellas on this thing today, don't ever forget when you come to Western Australia and you see the orange Christmas tree, that Uncle Lenny will be there waiting for his present for you to bring him.
Okay, thank you very much, Len. Would you please change the slide, Lisa?
Do you want me to put the video on this one on, or?
I think I've missed Sue, so maybe the slides are in the wrong order. Let's come back to this one.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to Sue for her.
Whoops, we're just all
Oh
going the
no,
wrong
that's
way.
the end, isn't it?
No, I think maybe Sue was going to do her song here and we forgot. So
Okay. Oh, let's, yeah. So Sue, back to you. Do you have a song or a comment on country that you would like to offer for us here?
Like when saying about waiting to go onto country is really important. So waiting to be invited onto country, to be welcomed onto country is really important on the East Coast as well, and probably all over Australia. I've got a song that I actually wrote travelling over country quite widely on the East Coast in 2019 before the fires and before the drought broke. And country spoke to me, and I believe that these words are country's words to all of us. So I'm going to sing the first part in Whadjuk because it's one of the languages that has the most words on the East Coast to be able to put into almost a direct translation, and it's quite good because the song is called Singing Up Country, but the words when translated into Whadjuk actually are we are country singing, and I think that's absolutely beautiful because we are country singing. So I'll sing it for you. Nyani nurbangu babira, nyani dangu babira, dagan yirgu abu bangebu, nurbang wang abani. We're singing up country, we're singing up the land that's bitter and broken, country that's been forsaken. We turn our faces to sky country and call in the clouds. We ask the spirits to send the rains and heal country now. We're dancing up country, we're dancing up the land that's bitter and broken, country that's been forsaken. We dance the stories of the ancestors that teach respect of the land. We dance the stories that the old ones told to heal country's soul. We're yarning up country, we're yarning up the land that's bitter and broken, country that's been forsaken. We sit and listen to country speak, and we learn how to care. We need to speak for country now, or always live with despair. We're singing up country, we're singing up the land that's bitter and broken, country that's been forsaken. We come together on this ancient land to right the wrongs of the past. We come together to sing country out, making bonds that last. We're singing up country, we're singing up the land that's bitter and broken, country that's been forsaken. Nyani nurbangu babira, nyani dagungu babira, dagan yirgu abu bangebu, nurbang wan abahani.
Thank you so much, Sue. It was magnificent. Can I ask you a question without notice here? Does singing with country help to heal country? That is a belief in the Kimberley, actually.
Yeah. Singing with country helps country exist. I think that's the best way. And when you, whether it's my song that is modern or the old ancient songs, when we travel from country, place to place on country, we sang in certain spots because our beliefs were that country didn't exist without the singing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lisa, would you move the slides back to that film, the next little film from Lenny, which is this one. Thank you.
Hey, my name's Len Collar. I'm a Whadjuk Noongar of the place that people might refer to as the Perth metropolitan area. It's always involved in a sense of country, the appreciation, the understanding and the meaning and the connection to country through place names, and so deconstructing the ancient codes of the place names in the Noongar boodjar. Basically documenting and publishing and researching around Nyungar, the boodjar country, the families and the extended families, and the courage and the knowledge were three important tenets that kind of helped me to evolve my academic capacity. Kart Jenning Bow. The first word kart means hill or head or above. Jenang means to look, and bow means afar, so the hill or the mountain to look afar. And without going to say, I think a lot of people might know it better as a place called Kings Park. But we Noongar Whadjuk British know what its name is, and Kaitjenaming Bow really reflects the essence of it. Go up on top of what you might know as Kings Park, and if you can see a long way, then you understand why the Noongars call it Kaitjenaming Bow. There's over 5,000 place names of Noongar origin scattered on the sides of the roads, inscribed on the signposts right across Noongar country. Over 50 or 100,000 of years of human occupation. I mean, what didn't they do it in and around Kings Park? I mean, in a sense, that's why, once the colonials got here, they realised what was good for Noongars.
I love technology when it works.
It's no surprise to me that they built what we see as the modern capital city of Perth on the old capital city, I guess, if you want to use that way, that the Noongars had, built upon the foundations of ancient infrastructure. So when we dig into the deep roots of understanding the country and closing the gap of our cultural understanding.
Sandy, while we're waiting for that to click in,
I think place names is one of those discourses, it's one of those journeys that all Australians are excited to be involved in.
Could you not hear that, Len?
Nah, did everyone hear that? I didn't hear it. I didn't see anything.
Oh, I think everybody else heard it.
Oh, you lucky things. I'm sitting here looking at I'm looking at the screen. I went, where's it all gone?
Yeah, no.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All good.
Okay, thank you very much, Len,
Mm.
for that film that we saw, but you didn't, but I know you saw it once. So it was actually about Nyungar language and looking out from Kartjin and Ingbo.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering if, so this is a question without notice too,
Mhm.
in the same way that I asked Sue if songs heal country. Does Nyungar language heal country? And who should learn to speak Nyungar language?
Oh, well, the back end of the question first is everybody speaks language. So, not sure, I can't say exactly for other places, but here in the Western Australia, for example, all the big trees, the marries, the carries, the chewits, the tingles, the boodjars, all of those plants in our estates across the southwest, they're all of Noongar origins. There are no English names for those trees. So a long time ago, the Noongars were colonising the minds of the outsiders. And when I often see this complex conversation, for me, sometimes I think people don't understand how much agency our mob have had and how much say we've had and how much influence we have in the making of Australianness or Australiana. It's absolutely bedrock connected to the ancient knowledge, the language, the history of the places. And I play a little game with people. I say to them, can you tell me what the Noongar name for a jarrah tree is? And they sit there looking around going, oh, I don't know what it is. It's a jarrah. Everybody knows that. But in actual fact, they don't know it because they are under the colonising discourses that they think the Noongar words are English, and they're not. They're Noongar. And I'm pretty sure that if I had a look at the plants and stuff elsewhere, I probably would find a lot of the trees actually have maintained their names. So what was the other part of the question, Sandy? Sorry.
Does speaking Nyungar heal country?
Yeah. It does and can heal country, but it's also singing with the backup of doing. You know, if the paddocks have been denuded, like in southwest Australia, what is it, Sandy? Correct me if I'm wrong. Something like more than 90% of the original landscape's been destroyed. It's pretty horrifying. It's horrifying. Region. So I imagine we could sing all day long. I'm not sure whether that increased plant life or bird life. But what I do know is, if I use the case study of Uncle Oral Maguire out at Balladong country to the east, I mean, he went and bought some land. He got one of them grants. And he said to the real estate bloke, I want what you would consider the worst land. I want the one with all the rocks. I want the one that's all the trees have been chopped down and cleared. I want all the ones where the sheep have trodden all over the little creeks and that and destroyed the banks and the whole. That's what I want. Oh, but you know, what do you want that for? That's horrible. Nobody wants that. He said, well, that's what I want because I'm going to sing to it and I'm going to love it again. I'm going to care for it. And so about 15 years ago, he replanted all of his estates. All the little creeks formed up proper again. He said, Lenny, he said, nephew, there's more kangaroos there, there's more yongers, there's more wedges. The cruel amount of birds have all come back. They all got things in my trees. It's everywhere. So singing is one thing, yes, but you've got to sing it with the backup and the action. Certainly here in the Noongar lanes, we've got a lot of environmental problems because of the destruction, as I've described.
Thank you very much, Lenny. I wanted to ask you one little question, but we're actually running out of time. I'll give you, I do want you to answer it though. So the trilogy of boodjar, moort and Whadjuk, how are they inseparable? But just a really short answer. Okay, so the Whadjuk is science or knowledge. And because I was in academy and people challenged what Aborigines had to say, because Aborigines were describing and descriptive and reactionary in the challenges that they were launched at them. So I thought, well, I want to be a scholar.
So the first thing I do is now to sit down and work out how does my language inform me to come up with theoretical constructs, which will be subject to critique and review and all that sort of bulldoze. So I come up with the trilogy, which was based upon what my people had taught me. And the trilogy is 3 parts. The first part is the science or the courage or knowing. The second part is the boodjar, it's of the country and whatever's in it. And the third one was the people, the moort. So the moort have the science to inform the boodjar, the moort, and science itself. And so when people say, let's go talk to the old people or the TOs or the British or whatever, that's why I constructed the trilogy, because I read a lot of stuff in Australia. And when I try to search for other Aboriginal and Islander peoples, as well as Australians doing theoretical work of the kind that I was doing, at that time, it was a bit scarce. And I encourage Aboriginal people and Islanders right around Australia and elsewhere, start writing in your language, speak in your language, and start constructing the intellectual discourse on, about, and through our lenses. You know, to write, to take Western theoretical models and somehow say, because I'm talking about it, suddenly it turns into an Aborigine. That's news to me. But anyway, that's the reason why I did the trilogy.
Well, thank you very much, Len. And someone's just put into the chat, head, heart, hands. What a great way to think about it too. Lisa, would you please change the slide to Sue's, border of Sue's country? And yeah, so Sue, do you have a poem or a song? And then we'll open up to questions for everyone. But first, please, the time is for you to say as you wish at the moment to bring this sort of workshop to a conclusion.
So this is probably Nyungar country up in the Snowy Mountains. It's borderlands to Yuin country. I was actually sitting by water when I wrote this poem. And one of the elders I spent a lot of time with, she says, if you're born of country, you're of country, you're under the law of country, and you have responsibility for country. And that's all of us who are born on Australian country. If you're born on Durra country, if you're in Sydney, then it is your responsibility. You're under the law there. And so this poem is a little bit about asking country, what is my dreaming? What is my responsibility? So it starts, what is your dreaming? I sat and swatted at the flies, and country said to me, why swat them? They're only doing what they were born to do. They're following their dreaming. What is your dreaming? I lay and traced the clouds with my eyes, watching the sunset colours dapple them in shades of pink and purple, and wished I could be free to change like them. Country said to me, they are insubstantial, changing from one minute to the next. Portents of the future, they are doing what they are created to be. They are following their dreaming. What is your dreaming? I sat for hours and watched the flicker of the flames in the fire, red and orange and blue, and I got lost in them. Country threw out a warning to me. Be careful of the time spent this way. Fire is meant to draw, to bring in cleansing and new life. This is its dreaming. To spend too long with the fire will burn you to your core and you will lose your substance. What is your dreaming? I lay in the sun and let the heat soak into my skin and smelt the season of coming abundance in the air. I remembered the moon of the night just gone bright and almost full, and country said to me, the sun and the moon bring cycles in life, marking the turn of the season and tides. This is the dreaming they were created for. What is your dreaming? In the shade of a gully, I sat and listened to the birds and the wind and the trickle of water. Country said to me, these are all messages of hope and warning. The winds bring messages of seasons to come and the directions from which it flows. The birds tell the truths of the old woman and the law of the land, and the sound water brings the message of life. These are their dreaming. What is your dreaming? I wondered, what was my dreaming? I waited quietly, patiently, hoping country would speak. I waited a while. a long while. Then Country said to me, your dreaming is to swim with the eel and the turtles in the rivers and the fish in the seas. Your dreaming is to run with the emu and the kangaroo and all on the land. Your dreaming is to laugh and sing with the birds of the air. Your dreaming is to learn to care for the rivers and trees, for all of these are your people. Your dreaming is to pass on this knowledge until the rivers of dreaming are no more. Your dreaming is to preserve and to hold. Follow your dreaming.
Beautiful way to end.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Sue. Lisa, can we throw to you now to lead any questions or anything from the chat?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Sue, for that beautiful song. There was a question a little bit earlier from Dan after your song, Sue, that says, I'm curious whether you hear music when you walk on country. I remember an elder once told me different places and even a rock can give a song. What do you think?
Yes, and also they speak.
They speak.
Like, how do I say? I was at one place one time and I was walking through there and this joy just welled up through the rocks. And I was like, this is a place of celebration. And there was some interpretation that I came to about half an hour later, and it said it was a place where marriages were held and families gathered to celebrate time together. And I was just like, the rocks spoke to me that was that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Trudy, thank you for asking this great question to kind of, maybe we can hear from both Sue and Len on this question. How can we integrate knowledge from today into acknowledgement of country? So as we were talking about when we prepared for this, we are a gathering of educators, and as educators, you know, is there any advice or, you know, anything that either one of you would like to say about integrating into our acknowledgement of countries when we teach, I suppose?
If you want, I can go on that. Just quickly, Trudy, good to see you again. I haven't seen you for a long time. You're one of my students from Murdoch. Is Diane Watkins in this thing? I think I saw
Diane's
Diane
here too.
Yeah,
Len,
Diane's a
Diane
Canadian.
said hello.
Yeah, she's a Canadian and she is an environmental person. She too is a Murdoch graduate. I just want to acknowledge those two Murdochians, if that's the right way to say it. But sorry, what was the question again?
Trudy's question, how can we integrate knowledge from today into acknowledgement of country?
No, well, I think there's plenty of websites out there. There's plenty of opportunity to put stuff out onto your websites and your links to the companies you work. You know, for you personally, when you get up and do the conversations, a lot of people are doing it in English. In NZ, the Maoris, they speak in their language, as do the Pakeas. So some along the traps, Australia, the penny's got to drop for the Australians to speak to another in their original languages, because, you know, whilst the rocks speak to you and the trees and whatnot, one of the arguments that I've heard many times is people saying that they don't speak English. So to really communicate with the rivers and the rocks and the trees and whatnot, you've got to talk to them in their language so they can understand what you're saying. So, you know, to continue the evolution of Australians is to realise, no, we're not in England, we're not in Scotland or Wales, and we're in none of those places. We've come from some other spot. We're from here. And the plants and the animals and the rivers and the streams, they all speak Nyungar in our part of the world. So it'd be good practice for Australians to start to speak in the language of the land where you are located. And it's going on all around the world, so it's not some racist sort of horror story to beat you up over. This is just normal, good human behaviour on someone else's country. For example, when I and my wife go to Indonesia, Selamat pagi Pak, bagus sekali jalan ini Kerandangan Batu. You know, it's a great spot here, blah, blah, blah. And I had to learn to speak that language because it's not my land. I don't come from here. But for me to show respect. And it's amazing when me and my wife were trying to work out how do you say, get people's attention, the magic word is permisi. And all of a sudden, when we said to the Indonesians, "Permisi, permisi, Ibu," they turn around and they respond to you. We try to say, "Oi, oi, oi." Didn't even get a head turn. And so that's my message. Well, how do we build it, or how do you do it, is get into the Australianisation through language and culture.
Sue, do you want to respond to that question?
I'm in agreement with Len about language. On the East Coast, languages are going through revitalisation. So spending a lot of time going to all different sources, elders in the community, and sources from when things were first written down in the settlements and things like that. So it's hard to speak in languages that haven't been spoken for a long time. And I know that a lot of people are desperate to learn language. One of the ways that in the Sydney area, some of my friends are what I call language champions and are revitalising the language and spending a lot of time teaching the language. You can find out how to learn a variety of languages, whether it's Whadjuk. There's courses you can do through CSU in Charles Sturt University. In Whadjuk, there's courses being held throughout Sydney on Darug language. There's books like this one, which is, I don't know if anyone can see that on my screen. It's called Kui Midagar. So that's hello friend or come here friend. And it's got a lot of Aboriginal words and some sentences from the Darug culture that can be used in amongst the English at the moment, because it's not something that can. I am so jealous, Len, that you can speak your language. Man, I'm so jealous. So, but yeah, it's something that we can all work towards making it part of our conversation and our everyday language by learning from wherever you can. And I know that Nicole, is it up in Gummingu country, Lisa teaches.
Uncle Miklo, yeah, teaches Gumbaynggirr, yeah.
Gumbaynggirr. So there's lots of different places where you can go and learn. But be aware that on the East Coast, that community need to learn the language first, because it's their language and we need to know it first.
Yeah.
Before it gets transferred out into the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah. And Kat has written a comment in the chat that Len wrote a Nyungar acknowledgement for Millennium Kids, which they use on Noongar country when they don't have an elder with them. So that's a great kind of, because I know it's that thing of like, our elders and knowledge holders are very busy people, and they can't just drop everything to go do 10,000 welcome to countries and acknowledgement of country. And so that sounds like a respectful, great, thing to do.
So if I can, how much longer we got?
Well, we are at 8 o'clock, but please share some, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, because I just want to make a quick comment on the acknowledgement. Acknowledgements are done by strangers who don't come from the country, and the welcomes are done by the landowners. So part of the stuff that goes on here, like I'm sure elsewhere, there was a time when there was a bit of potential fisticuffs because Noongars that weren't from here were coming doing welcomes, and we said to them, "Listen, brother or sister, it's great that you want to come and do stuff, but please don't do that because you're out of order." Yeah, and so you've got to work through it. There's lots of challenges out there. I mean, learning to speak language in Australia, we do not speak English. Let's understand that. Australia is not English. Australian is Australian. And how do we end up in Australian? If whether they're Kuris or Murris or Nyungars or Torres Strait Islanders or Yamatis or Mulbas or Palawas or wherever they were talking in their language to the outsiders, to the foreigners, and this thing manifested that was something between the local language and English or Irish or Welsh or what the hell ever it was. But I hear continually, and I scratch my head about it, why Australians persist with saying we speak English. I mean, I don't know about you fellas in the audience, but I've been to England. They can hardly understand what we're talking about. And that's the reality. And Australians, it doesn't matter what, we got to grow up and take responsibility for who we are. We're not Suntan Poms, we're Australians. If people understand, from the Indigenous point of view, that our people have had absolute impact on the foreigners that come to our lands in a whole multitudes of ways, that's what we done, and we should be proud of that. We're not a broken down, busted up, sort of brown skinned suntan fellas sort of hiding under a rock. We are very powerful people, and it comes through on our language. Certainly, as I articulated, I mean, I didn't have to go to school to learn my language, as Sandy can attest to. I learned my language in the house where I grew up with all my family around me. And I know not everyone had that privilege to have that opportunity. But whichever way we get back to that spot, everybody has to pitch in and be generous and be learning and basically, continue to grind away so that maybe in the next generations, people will know what kaya is, or they'll know what these words are, because it's an inter-Indigenous dialogue within the Australian context, and we will understand each other. Read some of the books from Eastern Australia or from Tassie or wherever. Get to know more about, the other Indigenous people's voices in this dialogue.
Thank you so much, Len. Sue or Sandra, do you have any last messages for us?
I'm right, thank you.
Yeah.
Sue?
Yeah. I think we've been giving very clear marching orders, Len, and I really appreciate that, because as educators, we are continuing educating ourselves. And so as A squared, E squared as well, we're trying to encourage these conversations. I thank everybody for just showing up. That's a very important thing. Share the recording for this with other people who you feel would benefit from it. It will be available on our YouTube channel. And this is the beginning, not the beginning, this is the middle of an ongoing discussion that needs to just keep being foregrounded and keep being discussed. So
Lisa,
Sue.
Also, don't be afraid to take on board and ask and say, this is an acknowledgement and what a welcome is. So welcome, I can't do a welcome. This is what a welcome is. I'm doing an acknowledgement that I am acknowledging that I'm walking on the country that you're walking on. Okay, so that's part of your job as educators, to educate people about that stuff. So yeah, please add in that to any acknowledgement you do and say, this is what a welcome is. I'm not doing a welcome, I'm acknowledging.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Any last questions?
There's a lot of great, if you have a minute, Sue and Len and Sandra, to look in the chat, there's a lot of great comments there. And just for everybody, if you are interested in continuing the conversation with A squared, E squared, our national working group for the Reconciliation Action Plan is kicking off. And so if you're interested in being part of that, we welcome anybody that wants to be part of that for our national organization and our chapters. And I just really want to thank from the bottom of my heart, Len and Sue and Sandra for being here and sharing so generously. You can all just give little claps or little thumbs ups or little hearts or whatever you want to do. It was a really beautiful evening. Thank you so much. And we have a really, an ongoing program this year of our learning circles. So once a month on the third week of the month, we will have a learning circle. So the next one is in April 23rd, and it's going to be about deep ecology in Australia, past, present, and future, with one of the deep ecology founders, John Seed. So that will be a really delightful conversation, I'm sure, touching on some of these themes as well. There's the little QR code if you already want to register for that. And then the month after, we're having a presentation about also Monty Nixon from Canberra, so ACT, will be talking about country as teacher. So the discussions continue, and I just, yeah, really happy to have seen you all tonight here. Thank you very much. Stay in touch, and yeah, let's all just keep going with these really important discussions in this crazy world that we live in, crazy and beautiful. So thanks, everybody. And we'll hang around for a few minutes. I'm going to turn the recording off.
Thanks very much to you, Lisa. Hugely
Yeah.
appreciated for all your work and for bringing this together. Thank you.